Mayor Bibb, once again, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a year. Does it feel like 2 or 3, or does it really feel like a year?
Well, I think 1 year in mayor years is 3 years, so it feels like 3, but certainly it's been an amazing first year in office and so excited about the continued work ahead.
What are you most proud of in this first year?
I'm really proud of the strong foundation we made in our first year, delivering on some of my key campaign priorities I campaigned on nearly 2 years ago. In terms of reimagining public safety, modernizing City Hall, making sure we lay a strong foundation for the economic recovery of our community, and really repositioning Cleveland on the national stage. We have a major moment coming out of this pandemic, and I think we've laid a strong foundation to see real growth and real change over the next 10, 15, 20 plus years.
I guess there were 2 things that I can think of in the past year as you were just becoming mayor, where people said, okay, I don't know. First was the snowstorm.
Yeah.
The second was keeping the bars open late during the All-Star game. Looking back on anything at all in the last year, is there anything you do differently?
No. I think if there's one thing I've learned is, as mayor, the buck will always stop with me. And even when I get a decision wrong, I need to be confident in the fact that I had the right intelligence and the right information to deliver for the residents of Cleveland. And I think you bring up 2 important points. One, that first snowstorm we experienced in January, we had 2 back-to-back snowstorms with nearly 15 inches of snow. And I think those snowstorms really laid bare the work we had to do throughout my tenure as mayor of really modernizing how we do the basics in our community. Just this year, we hired 120 snowplow drivers. We've modernized our ability to have GPS maps in our snowplow trucks. And this last blizzard we had during the holiday season, we did pretty well to show residents we made some real improvements. And then when it came to closing bars for an All-Star weekend, I got a lot of pushback for that. But we were down nearly 200 police officers. And as the mayor during that time, my first event, major event, global event coming out of the pandemic, I thought keeping our city safe had to be my #1 priority.
Yeah, you did get a lot of pushback.
I did.
Back then. And that was that when you had not been mayor very long.
No.
How tough was it to stick to your guns on that one?
It was hard. I mean, I had a lot of business owners who were struggling during that time at the pandemic. We were just coming out of the Omicron variant, who hadn't been open for a long time, and they were really counting on All-Star Weekend to give them that economic boost. But what we saw during that weekend was the city was safe, no major issues of violent crime, and bars and restaurants still made a lot of money. And to me, it was a win-win.
I know you're a student of this and have been for quite some time, and how the government operates and how the mayor's job operates. But what's been the biggest surprise of the past year when it comes to doing this job?
You know, I'd say the biggest surprise for me has been the challenge of dealing with the issues of violence and the tragic loss of life we see in our city. As you know, Russ, my tenure as mayor really didn't start when I was sworn in on January 3rd. It started on New Year's Eve when we lost Officer Shane Bartek. And finding the right words and the empathy I needed to have to really show the Bartek family we had their back, and working with Chief Drummond and Chief Howard at the time to make sure we caught those criminals who were in charge of that heinous violent crime was a hard thing to navigate, but we did it together as a city. And then to bookend my first year, we lost firefighter Johnny Tetrick. And seeing the compassion and grace that his daughters had at that funeral, that's the stuff that keeps me going as mayor. And as a son of a first responder, I think that's been the hardest part of my job.
I know presidents are asked this question in terms of their predecessors. I know you're very close to former Mayor White. Do you ever call former mayors or talk to former mayors to get advice or insight? Kind of walk me through one of those conversations. It's a very exclusive club.
Yes, it is.
What do you folks talk about?
Well, you know, I recently both talked to Mayor White and Mayor Campbell and other mayors across the country about how do we tackle this shortage of police officers. You know, I was just talking to my colleagues from across the country about what do we do as a nation to encourage more folks to join law enforcement. So we'll talk about big things like how do we hire more police, but also small innovations about how we fix more potholes in our respective cities. But it's a small but important club of good mentors and advisors for me as a new mayor.
Governor DeWine just signed a bill which will help you in what you wanted to do
Yeah.
in terms of expunging low-level marijuana convictions in the city of Cleveland. Why was that important to you?
It's a big deal for the state, and it's a big deal for the city. Before I became mayor, I had many friends and family members who had low-level marijuana convictions who couldn't get a student loan to go back to school. They couldn't get access to quality housing. They couldn't get an SBA loan to start a business. And having a low-level marijuana offense should not be a barrier to economic opportunity. And so last April, we sent over 4,000 expungements to our local courts. We went into a roadblock, but we found bipartisan opportunities in Columbus to work with State Senator Nathan Manning to make sure not just Cleveland, but every city in this state can, on behalf of their residents, go to court and expunge these low-level marijuana convictions, and it shows that Democrats and Republicans can work together.
That 4,000 number, is that still the number you're thinking?
That's our initial target, and once we go through our process, we're going to have a very deliberate process with Judge Early and the Clerk of Courts, Earl B. Turner, and after that process is complete, hopefully we'll have a roadmap to show other cities and other counties across the state how to get it done.
Governor DeWine also signed a bill that makes a requirement of showing a photo ID before you vote, the first of its kind in the state. Of course, Democrats are against it. The NAACP has come out against it as well, saying it potentially is discriminatory. What are your thoughts on that?
Ohio is going in the absolutely wrong direction when it comes to voting rights. Access to the ballot box is a sacred right in this state and a sacred right in this nation. And we have a lot more to do across this country to protect the voting rights of our residents, particularly from disenfranchised communities. One thing I'm excited about is just today, we're going to be announcing a $5.5 million investment to do participatory budgeting in Cleveland. You know, we had a low voter turnout rate in this last election. Less than 20% voted in this last election. That's unacceptable. So anything we can do to show people that local government is going to fight for them, we want to make that investment right here in Cleveland, Ohio.
I want to ask you about the pandemic funds that you're going to present tonight to the City Council, but just for a moment, talk about the Cleveland Browns. I know you're a big fan. Disappointed, I presume, like the rest of us
disappointed in the season, but there are some glimpses in the last handful of games, and we'll see what happens next year. There's always next year. It's the most important theme in Cleveland Browns history. There's always next year.
Well, the Browns lease expires at First
does.
Energy in 5 years. Where are you on using city funds, perhaps to build a new stadium in Cleveland?
Well, I say this. As we approach negotiations with the Browns and the Haslams, it's going to be important that we, as a community, find a way to not just think about the stadium, but the lakefront as an asset for the entire region. And it's my responsibility as mayor, as we approach that negotiation, to structure that deal that has the right return on investment for the residents of Cleveland. That's my commitment. Prior deals haven't had the right ROI for the residents of Cleveland, and my leadership team is committed to working with all the right stakeholders, including the Browns, to make sure we get a fair deal for the residents of our city.
And in terms of using city funds, you are willing to put that on the table in some form?
We have to explore every scenario we can to keep the Browns here, but leverage the stadium renewal of that lease as a catalytic investment to have a world-class lakefront. That's my priority.
You hear people talking about putting a dome on this stadium. You've probably seen things that we have not. Is that even feasible?
We shall see. It's a big price tag.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's talk about tonight. You're going to propose $40 million from the American Rescue Plan Act on education, jobs, workforce development, and modern technology. The press release just came out. Tell me about that, $40 million.
Yeah. Well, in this round of ARPA investments, we really wanted to focus on how to support young people to recover from the learning loss they experienced during the pandemic. CMSD has made some amazing strides, but a lot of that progress was stalled during COVID-19. Coming out of the pandemic, we saw double-digit declines in reading, math, and science scores. And so we must do a better job of addressing that learning loss. The other thing we have to focus on is how do we do a better job of getting Clevelanders the skills and tools they need to get back to work. We have billions of dollars coming from Washington in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, jobs in construction, green energy, and manufacturing that we got to prepare our workforce for. That's so important.
And you said that there's more money left too. This is not the end of the
45 million left after this round of 40, and so those funds will all be focused on making sure that we as a city and as a region don't miss this moment coming out of the pandemic. We missed this moment coming out of the Great Recession. We can't afford to do it.
You say there's a timetable on this, right?
By 2024, we have to spend this money. Yeah.
Cleveland Schools CEO Eric Gordon, of course, has announced his retirement. How close are you in picking a new CEO?
Well, we just announced our search firm at the end of last year. We'll be doing community sessions, engaging key stakeholders in the community about what the profile of that CEO should look like over the next couple of weeks. And it's our goal to have a candidate selected by the end of the school year.
What are you looking for specifically?
I'm looking for a leader who has a proven track record in closing the achievement gap, particularly for Black and brown students in a public school system. I'm looking for a leader who understands the importance of the changing nature of public education coming out of the pandemic, and how do we expose young people to work and careers earlier on in their development. But I'm also looking for a CEO who shares my sense of urgency, because in my opinion, Cleveland kids can't afford to wait for real change, and we need to accelerate the pace of change that we're seeing in our school district right now across our community.
You have a number of things, of course, on your plate, but is there a priority for 2023? Anything you're working on in particular?
Yeah, well, I think in 2023, we're focused on continuing the progress we've made on violent crime. We saw that homicide investigations reduced by 4% in 2022. Criminal homicides down 9% in 2022. So we want to maintain that progress this year. We want to build the momentum on our visions for the lakefront. Not just talk about it, but see real change happening for our lakefront. And then lastly, as the son of the Southeast side, I'm really looking forward to announcing my Marshall Plan for the east side of Cleveland to make sure that we see cranes in the sky once and for all on the east side, like we see in the west side and in downtown.
So you think that will happen this year? That announcement will come this year?
It'll come this year. Stay tuned.
All right. Mayor, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.